Hey, good day, world. It's so exciting to be back again with season 2, episode 2 of Upset Theology. I'm so proud and excited for you to join me as we make this journey to upset your theology. Just a quick overview of Upset Theology for the newcomers. I explained this in season 1, but I want to take the time to just break down the reason why I named this ministry and this podcast Upset Theology. I noticed over the years that a lot of times sometimes we have like a level of theology. Believe it or not, everybody has a level of theology. Even for unbelievers, they have a theology, they have a way they think about life, and even religion. I think in one of my previous episodes, I spoke about how even non-believers, in a sense, refer or at least show a level of regard to Christianity or just the belief of God, which is a theology. Non-believers even have a sense of addressing a thing. When they say, I don't believe in God, they still address God. So the goal and the intent of Upset Theology is for those who, in a sense, want to acknowledge God and or who believe in God but want to, reassure themselves or get more knowledge on the belief in God, and or for those who just don't believe, that want to engage and say, I have questions. So the reason I call it upset is because when things are knocked over, you would set it up. As I often mention, if you knock over a bottle of water, which I saw someone do the other day, they scramble to set it up. And what I want to do and encourage throughout these episodes is to allow you the time to realize that something may be toppled over, not being the one to call what you believe being knocked over, but giving you the truth, or at least the truth of the Bible, and allowing you to set up or upset your theology and get better understanding. We're always going to dig into the Bible. We're always going to be Bible backed. And that's all I'm here to do. I'm here to present the evidence, and I'm allowing you the time and opportunity to upset your theology based on what's written in the Word and through the influence of the Holy Spirit. So I am proud of you. I thank you for joining me today. It's an honor and a pleasure for you to welcome me into your space. And I want to just jump right into this thing because it's been kind of like stirring for an entire week because we record weekly, and I've been ready to talk about this particular topic since last week. So if you have not seen the last episode, which is episode 1 season 2 of Upset Theology, the title was Save Me From Myself, and it spoke about the ways in which we kind of subject ourselves to these things that we're kind of like, I want to say, constantly needing saving from. I think we all may have met a person that always seems to need help, but interestingly, there are times when it's always us. The one that you met might be you. That's the interesting thing. But I've seen patterns within myself where I realized that I need a saving from myself. It's like, I've never drowned on the beach, but the lifesaver, or the what do we call those people? The lifeguards are always there. It's interesting, I call them lifesavers. But the lifeguard is, at least on a public beach, they're usually there to save you when you need saving, and that's who God can be to you. But save me from myself was just speaking as to how we often get into, y'all gotta go watch it, how we often get into these things that we always need saving from. So at the end of the day, I wanted you to wake up and realize that in order to not always need to be saved from things that you could avoid, come around to the understanding to try to get ahead of that thing. And interestingly, in episode 2, we're going to just dig a little deeper, because I mentioned 4 people in that episode, but I wanted to dig into Samson because it came up in a conversation. And it just seems like I'm actually going to chop this up in possibly 2 episodes, possibly 3. I'm trying to also lower the time of our episodes. It's roughly 45 minutes. This one might be the same thing. Y'all work with me, but I'm trying to lower them down a little bit. But I might split this up within a couple of episodes, because I want to really dig into the story of Samson. So this episode is going to be called No Margin for Error. I'm sorry. Ooh, that's interesting how I say no margin for error and then I actually mess it up. But no margin for error. It speaks about, it's almost similar to Save Me From Myself, but it's on the flip side, because when you need saving from yourself, you're in a situation, or you're getting caught up in something. No margin for error kind of speaks to the other side of being into a situation. No margin for error speaks of you being in something that you are called to be into, something you are supposed to be in, but you should have that understanding that, hey, this thing that I'm in, I should not mess it up. I don't want to mess it up. I cannot mess it up. Usually that's because it's tied to something that needs to happen. It's not something that you just desire to happen. This is something usually that you're called to, that you're purposed to. Just for example's sake, if you have a job, then that's your job. That's what you're called to do. If you have what we call in the church world a calling, something that you were called to do, something that you do well, then there's oftentimes when that thing that you're in has no margin for error. In the carpentry world, they have this statement that says measure twice, cut once, because once you cut a piece of wood, you can't add wood back to it. So that speaks about there being no margin for error. As a chef, I'm not a chef, but I've heard stories that as a chef, if you're using something very expensive, or you're a part of an extensive process of preparing food, if you add the wrong ingredient, you can mess up the whole entire meal. And if the ingredient is a very rare or expensive product, then there's no margin for error. Once you use it, you might not be able to even get more. So there's no margin for error. And this is where I want to speak regarding your life, because your life is important. But the Bible speaks about this in regards to the story of Samson. So just an introduction of the story of Samson. If you can grab a Bible, or you can Google these Bible verses. Introduction to Samson is in Judges chapter 13, verses 2 to 5. It speaks about the birth of a Nazarite. Or a baby that's going to be raised as a Nazarite. And as a Nazarite came with certain instructions, which we'll read as to how a Nazarite is supposed to live. So, chapter 13, verse 2 to 5, it says, a certain man of Zorah named Manoah from the clan of Danites had a wife who was childless, unable to give birth. An angel of the Lord appeared to her, the wife, and said, you are barren and childless, but you are going to become pregnant and give birth to a son. So that's a whole rabbit trail. I would love to get into that. But the fact that she was childless and barren, but an angel came and gave her a special baby. You remember I said something that was assigned, something that was called to happen. This is that thing. It's a set aside thing that was called to happen. So it comes with instruction. It says, now see to it that you drink no wine, which is part of the Nazarite vow, and nor any other fermented drink. and that you do not eat anything unclean. Note that. You will become pregnant and have a son whose head is never to be touched by a razor, because the boy is to be a Nazarite, dedicated to God from the womb. That's another instruction. He will take the lead in delivering Israel from the hands of the Philistines. Now, I gave you a couple of instructions, but this last verse, or this last sentence, spoke about what his assignment, you remember, if you refer back to what I said, is it was an assignment tied to instructions. It said he will take lead in delivering Israel from the hands of the Philistines. Like I said, the story of Samson can go so many directions, but I want to speak about the margin for error. There being no margin for error. So the instructions start in verse 4. If you want to go, which I always encourage, please, because I can't sit here for 3 hours and teach and dig, but it is good and important for you to dig into these stories so you can kind of follow and build your understanding of these biblical stories. Now, let's see, the Nazarite instructions go a little bit further, because we are in the book of Judges, but if you can turn with me to the book of Numbers, it gives you more details on what a Nazarite is called to do. And when I go a little further, you're going to understand something. But yeah, Numbers 6 and 7, meaning Numbers chapter 6, verse 7, it speaks about the Nazarite vow. I wasn't going to read this verse, but it says in verse 5, it says, during the entire period of their Nazarite vow, no razor may be used on their head. They must be holy unto the period of their dedication to the Lord, until it's over. They must let their hair grow long. Throughout the period of their dedication to the Lord, the Nazarite must not go near a dead body. That's verse 6. Verse 7 says, even if their own mother or father or brother or sister dies, they must not make themselves ceremonially unclean on account of them, because the symbol of their dedication to God is on their head. Throughout their period of dedication, they are consecrated to the Lord. So I'm speaking about instruction, because being that the topic is no margin for error, it comes with instruction. In order to make error, that means you must kind of step outside of what you've been instructed to do. So I'm making this very clear, because there are things that we are called to do that if you don't follow it, then there will be error. And usually when there's error, there's something that dies, or you're sacrificing something that you were instructed to do. So now I want to, like I said, we're going to jump around. The main thing is introducing you to how Samson came about, what he was called to do, what he was instructed to do, and what him being instructed to do came with, like what requirements. So I want to now introduce his wife. Obviously, he met a wife after being born and living a little bit. Judges 14, there we go, verses 1 and 2. So yeah, I want to introduce you now to how Samson met his wife, because this is going to be pivotal when it comes to instruction, because being that you were given instructions, you should be able to focus on following those instructions no matter what, no matter who, because it said earlier, one of the instructions is not touching any dead thing. And it mentioned it doesn't matter if it's your mother, your father, your sister, or your brother. But when it comes to Samson's marriage, there's going to be times when he's going to be considered to compromise on certain instructions. So I want to introduce Samson's wife and how he met her. Samson went down to Timnah in Judges chapter 14, verse 1 and 2. Samson went down to Timnah and saw there a young Philistine woman, When he returned, he said to his father and mother, I have seen a Philistine woman in Timnah. Now get her for me as my wife. This is how he was introduced to his wife. I don't believe I want to talk about that this episode. I believe I'm going to get into that next episode. But this is pivotal because I don't want to call it downfall just yet, but the things that happens later in his life regarding him violating certain instructions or allowing himself to get into these traps or situations is, in a sense, a part of his own desire, because he saw this Philistine woman and he requested for her to be brought to him and made his wife. So that's just a note. If you're taking notes, that's a big one. So I want to now take a turn to speak on the repeated mistakes and ignoring certain traps that Samson kind of engaged in. These are a couple of repeated mistakes and ignoring some traps. In Judges 14, verse 8 and 9, it says, sometime later, when he went back to marry her, he turned aside to look at a lion's carcass being dead body. And in it, he saw a swarm of bees and some honey. He scooped out the honey with his hand and ate it as he went along. When he rejoined his parents, he gave them some, and they too ate it. But he did not tell them that he had taken the honey from a lion's carcass. Strike one. So not only did he get close to a dead thing, and then also he touched the bad or a dead thing, he shared it, which was a violation of one of his instructions or the vow that he made to being a servant of the Lord. And it's interesting how the thing that was a part of the thing that was dead, he wasn't supposed to touch something dead, but it was something sweet that attracted him to it, something that appeared to be good for consumption. That's a whole word right there, because the thing that's dead, and it's talking to me right now. The thing that is dead, the thing that you vowed from, or you were instructed from in the womb. He might not have been able to hear that instruction, but that instruction was given to him before he was even born, to not do this thing. And it had to be something important, because for you to receive an instruction and you aren't even born yet, this is something that you're supposed to hold on to. And it's so interesting that I believe I heard at one point, how can bees take root and create something in a dead thing? Usually they, based on history, they would make a hive in a tree or something else, but somehow it created the perception of there being something lively or something that's worth digging into in a dead thing. And that's another word. That's another message. But he repeatedly ignored the instructions. There's other things, but that's one. And then regarding Delilah, which I never did introduce his wife's name, because I want to get into that another episode. So believe it or not, there are always consequences for ignoring instruction. I'm going to call it traps, because with the instruction, there are going to be opportunities for you to violate those instructions. And based on violation, you're going to deal with some consequences. So now I want to speak on the downfall of Samson. because like I said, it's a very extensive story. This episode, I just want to introduce you to him, and kind of what happened in his life. So as we go on with the next episodes, you'll be able to follow. So in Judges 16, chapter 16, verse 18, if you could turn here with me, 18 and 21, it says, when Delilah saw, Delilah being his wife, I never did tell you his wife's name, so I apologize about that. But when Delilah saw that the Lord, when Delilah saw that her husband Samson, had told her all his heart, like what was going on in his heart, she sent and called the lords of the Philistines, saying, come up again, for he has told me all of his hearts, his secrets. Then the Lord of the Philistines came up to her and brought her the money in their hands. And the Philistines seized him and gouged out his eyes and brought him down to Gaza and bound him with bronze shackles. And he ground at the mill in the prison. So just a quick overview, because like I said, we're going to get into this in the next episode. The wife that he desired and the wife that he called for and married, the one that he was enticed or attracted to, ended up being a part of his downfall. Is a couple of things that caused for his downfall. One being his willingness to step outside of the vows. And when I speak about him touching a dead thing, that's speaking about his consideration to do something that he was instructed not to do, which usually compromises the integrity of a thing, which allows for more compromises or allows for you to now start considering things that you shouldn't have never considered. But in regards to his wife, he met and introduced and welcomed and engaged in a relationship where the person ended up selling him out. There was some secrets that people wanted to know about Samson, that when Samson got intimate with Delilah, he shared those secrets. And that's what this speaks to, because once she found out the secret, she sold her own husband out to the Philistines, the Lord of the Philistines. And once she got the secret, she sold. When I say sold out, but nowadays when you say, oh, you sold me out, that speaks to a person like sharing some secrets or doing something they shouldn't have done. But in this case, she literally sold him out. She got money for sharing these secrets. And that was a part of his downfall, because we're talking about no margin for error. Just to break this thing down, God instructs you to do something. God called you to do something. God needs you to do something. And not only does God need you to do something, there are people, I put a post on Facebook the other day, there are people that are depending on your obedience to survive something. There are times when people are depending on your obedience in regards to their life. You might say, well, what does my obedience have to do with them? Because it's tied, the thing that they need is tied to your obedience. So engaging in all of these situations, man, my mind is going crazy right now because I'm thinking about stuff regarding my life. Regarding engagement in these situations and these circumstances, you are now, I want to say, you're going to become a part of your own demise, your own downfall. The things that you're desiring, the things that you are engaging in, the things that you are allowing into your life is going to become a part of your own downfall. I want to turn to Romans 6 and 23, because it is a verse that speaks to this. It says, for the wages of sin is death, but the gift of God is eternal life in Christ Jesus. When it speaks about the wages of sin is death, when you go to work and you exchange your hours for money, your wages of hours is finances. You get paid for what you do. But the wages of sin is death. Sin being what you were instructed to do and you did not do. That is now a sin. When God tells you to do something and you don't do it, you are sinning. And regarding the life of Samson, there were things that he engaged in that was sinful, and he got paid for it by in an equal death. Eventually, as we get into the next episode, you're going to hear about that, or you might even jump ahead and look into it. But I just wanted to speak on there being no margin for error. The impact on others I mentioned a little earlier. We could turn to Judges 16 and 30. Because it was spoken in his birth, before he was born, it was stated that he was going to be a part of the bigger plan. In his birth, before he was born, he was called to be a part of the redemption and the saving of the Israelites. So I'm just trying to make light on the fact that your disobedience is going to impact others. And it's interesting. Are you called to something? Is there something that God has instructed to do or for you to do? And in Judges 16:30, it speaks to this a little bit. I'm turning there. Sorry, guys. It says, Samson said, "Let me die with the Philistines." Then he pushed with all his might, and down came the temple on the rulers and all the people in it. Thus he killed many more when he died than when he lived. So not only did he not particularly accomplish what he was supposed to accomplish, he sacrificed what was supposed to be something he was supposed to do. He literally gave up on himself. And not only did he give up on himself, he killed, it says, thus he killed more when he died than when he lived. There's much more to the story. That's why I said I want to break it up. But I just want to encourage and teach on the fact that there is no margin for error. There are lots of situations. And it says, I put a note, how many are living with margins of error? Like considering things that they shouldn't be considering. Engaging in things that they shouldn't be engaging in. I want to call you higher, including calling myself higher. Nobody's above anybody else per se, but the most important thing is, what has God called you to do? So on today's episode, I hope that you were able to understand the reason why I'm introducing the story of Samson to you, regarding the margin for error and the reasons why you should be vigilant, aware, or even seek the instruction. If you have not received instruction, I would implore you to dig and pray and search regarding what God has called you to do, because there is something for you to do. I also want to encourage you to examine the areas in which you might be ignoring God's warnings. I would go as far to even say, if you haven't heard instruction, then that kind of shows that you might be violating. It's nothing worse. I'll even say it like this. Driving down the street, we all seen speed limit signs. But if you're just flying and you're not looking around to see what the speed limit is, then you are, in a sense, automatically ignoring ignoring the warnings, because you're not even concerned with seeing the warnings. So I just want to encourage you through this episode to learn from the life of Samson. This is why these stories are in the Bible, so we can get an understanding of what God might be calling us to do. We are supposed to learn from the Bible. So it's a whole book full of people who have fallen and failed. Also people who obviously live, but Jesus being the perfect example and us being broken, Jesus came to show us what true living could be all about. But it was my goal to encourage you to examine your life regarding the warnings that God has given you. It says in Psalms 139 verse 23 to 24, search me, O God, and know my heart. Test me and know my anxious thoughts. See if there is any offensive ways in me, and lead me in the way of everlasting. So I just want to give you one couple, or actually two simple steps regarding developing habits of vigilance and accountability. In First Peter 5:8, it says, be alert and of sober mind. Your enemy, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion, looking for someone to devour. When it says be of sober mind, believe it or not, you don't have to get intoxicated with liquor or other things in order to not be sober. Your own desires can take you off track, or your own like I said, being a part of your own demise, just desiring things that you shouldn't be desiring, or is in a sense wasting time watching TV shows for hours, scrolling for hours. That doesn't allow your mind to be sober, believe it or not. And then James 1:5, it says, if any of you lacks wisdom, you should ask God, who gives generously. If you ask to all without finding fault, and it will be given to you. So on today's episode, I just want to encourage you to take this next week to first examine, because I'm going to build you up next week. I will build you up, because it's one thing to break you down and to dismantle certain areas, to point out certain particular flaws. I'm calling it like that, because the story is there for a reason. So you can get the full understanding of the life of Samson. There's a reason this story's in there, so you don't necessarily have to make the same mistakes that Samson made. So you can learn how to recognize traps. This is truly a part of training. In order to see a trap, you must be trained to see a trap. You must see where others have fallen before you. And as the topic says, and as I want to encourage you, believe it or not, there is no margin for error. All right, guys, I want to thank you for joining us today. Sorry to leave us on this note, but believe it or not, the building or the breaking down is a part of your encouragement. If you can't see the areas in which you might need help or assistance, then you can't build up. You can't put on that armor, because you don't even know where you're vulnerable. You don't even know where you're exposed. So in this episode, it was my intent to kind of like expose those areas of your life, so we can, on next episode, build you back up, to make you stronger, to make you wiser. Because you can seek, as we mentioned, you can seek for wisdom, but it is my hope to help you upset your theology and to upset your life. So go be upset. I love you guys. Bye-bye.